Greetings and happy Monday. Happy Monday to one and to all. Perhaps it is Tuesday, depending upon where you are on the globe. Give yourselves a round of applause for making it to and through another day, because as we know or should know, each day is truly a blessing. So before I begin this broadcast, I would like to present I repeat, a verbal disclaimer that some of the information you are about to hear from my narration and place upon the screen may be very disturbing for some. And the reason why I say some is because, unfortunately, here in 2025, we still have a problem with a certain population of people that is filled to capacity with hate. And unfortunately, if you have eyes to see, ears to hear, or just a discernment to feel, some of these individuals have no qualms whatsoever in exuding that hate, that venom that is tearing away at their soul. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I'm going to give this about maybe 30 to 60 seconds for you to just look at the face of this 72-year-old man. Just look at him. Look at his eyes. Look at the blank, the empty stare. There's no emotion in that face. Now, while you're doing that, I'll give you a little bit of a context. This is 72-year-old Robert Philip Ivers. And I do hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. But he was charged in a complaint with threatening to assault and red rum. That's how I'm going to refer to the taking of one's life. It's, if you say it backwards, you'll know what I'm speaking about. Red rum of a federal judge. He was previously convicted. Okay? Earmark that because we're coming back to it. He was previously convicted with threatening to red rum a federal judge. Now, on August the 28th, let me show you another good picture of Mr. Robert Philip Ivers. On August the 28th, and pay attention to the timeline, he had been reported for bizarre behavior at a church. Okay? September the 3rd, law enforcement responded to Ways Pet. I believe that's how you pronounce it. It'll show in the slides I'll show momentarily. Library. Because staff members had reported a man printing off a 236-page manifesto. The title of the manifesto, again, viewer and listening discretion is advised, is entitled How to Red Rum a Federal Judge. Now, this is where it gets a little bit dark, if the title alone isn't dark. And the woman that you see pictured is a U.S. District Court Judge, Wilhelmina, and we'll get to that momentarily. Now, this is where, as I mentioned, it gets a little dark. According to reports, and I implore you to do your research, on September the 3rd, 2025, he was charged and arrested. However, during transport, he complained that he was having a heart attack. Now, I'm not going to say that he was or was not, but according to reports, he was released from the hospital that night. He was rearrested on September the 5th. What makes this story extremely disturbing is this is not his first rodeo. He has been known around the block for some time now. Now, that is just a little snippet from the Federal Bureau of Prisons, where he was there, but he's not there now. And as you can see, 72 years old. Again, this is Robert Philip Ivers, 72, of North Dakota. But this is in Minneapolis. Let's take a look. And I hope I have the right information. That's not the one I wanted. Give me a moment. My apologies. This is very small. So, this is the anger. He had the vitriol against U.S. Judge Wilhelmina Wright. Now, this, as I mentioned, goes back. And if you just look at this snippet, and I will try to ad-lib as much as possible without taking the actual complexion from it. Ivers had filed a lawsuit stating that he lost because of U.S. District Court Judge Wright. They told Ivers that they doubted the validity of his claims, and it says here that sent him into a rage. One of the lawyers reported to federal marshals that he had made comments like, "This expletive judge stole my life from me," and stacked the deck to make sure he lost the case. Now, this is really, really concerning. and disturbing. Because again, this happened years ago. But somehow or another, it has been a pattern observed by me, and I'm sure plenty others by now, that these depraved individuals, despite the level, despite the degree of the threat, they somehow are released back into society. Can you imagine if by chance on September the 3rd, when he claimed to have been experiencing a heart attack, he roamed the streets and took innocent lives? Who would be to blame for that? Or, or, are there people working together, allowing these quote unquote invisible, and I've said this many times, invisible dog whistles to be blown, these mistakes? Perhaps that's a better use of the word or phrase. These critical mistakes to be made. Allegedly, and I have to say allegedly, to be prudent and responsible. You don't know the 50 different ways I plan to red rum her. Her being U.S. District Court Judge Wilhelmina Wright. Make sure I get back to the right side. That's not it. I'm sorry, but there are a lot of them, and I'm trying to get through to them. I may just have to move on. Okay, here we go. As I mentioned earlier at the top of the broadcast, this dates back. So at that time, he was 65. Again, unfortunately, I'm not good at math. I want to say that's a 7-year difference, but let me count for you. 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72. Yay! I got it right. I'm sorry. I am very strong in some areas, but math, please don't ask me for my assistance when it comes to anything mathematical. Even with a calculator, I will mess it up every time. I'm working on it, but as I've said many times, it's a phobia of mine, and I'm just not good at math. Sorry. 65. So this again dates back 7 years. And jurors found him guilty of threatening to red rum a U.S. District Court judge, which again I showed in the picture earlier, Wilhelmina Wright, and making the threat across state lines. Ivers, Robert Philip Ivers, 72, 65 at the time, was living in West Fargo, North Dakota. Wow. And was angry. I would say he was much more than angry with U.S. District Judge Wilhelmina Wright for ruling against him in a lawsuit he had filed in 2015. So this anger and rage never left this man's spirit and soul. Lastly, it is reported that Ivers responded with a series of threats directed at Wright, and into a call to a U.S. District Court. John Tunheim, Tunheims, I hope I'm saying this correctly, deputy clerk. They referred to him as a walking time bomb, and he was, quote, crazy angry at her. So again, look at his face. I would say that's an accurate assessment. Now, I mentioned earlier about a timeline and how all of these things have been happening. Now, this takeover in Washington, D.C., I believe was somewhere around August 10th or close to it. August the 10th. August the 10th. The world witnessed the tragedy, despite how some people may feel or care, or those that don't, still many witnessed a tragedy. It has been said and reported, again, do your research, that Robert Philip Ivers, who is now 72, made some serious plans to return to a church, the Annunciation Church, that experienced a horrific tragedy involving children. And in some of his writings that was found, he mentioned unaliving children. There was a picture, according to reports, of the former Pope crosshairs, names of judges. Now, how this happened, I don't know. Ivers was sentenced to and had, I'm just shaking my head right now. Supervised release that included immediate surrender of his Minnesota driver's license and that he maintain appropriate communication with probation officers. At the conclusion of the hearing, Ivers was escorted to an interview room where he quickly became agitated and pounded his fist on a table, broke a chair leg, and threw his paperwork while continuously screaming the word hate. I want you to earmark that word because we're going to come back to that. When Ivers left the room, he extended his middle finger at one of the probation officers and yelled, I'm going to get some expletive to expletive red from you. I'm sorry. expletive. I know the word. Excuse me. Expletive. Trying to get too much in. Expletive. Ivers is charged with one count of threatening to red rum a United States official, and he was scheduled to make his initial appearance at the U.S. District Court. So again, take a look at this picture. Now you should be able to read this. But he was advertising this, again, 236-page manifesto. And it was, again, pay attention to this, designed to teach extremists, again, pay attention to that word, I'll be back to that, on how to plan, train, hunt, stalk, and red rum anyone, including judges, their family members, politicians, and more. It advertised that the harsh reality is that judges are going to perish. While investigating the case, law enforcement learned, again, as I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, that on August 28, 2025, Ivers had been reported for concerning behavior at an Episcopal church in Minnetonka, Minnesota. Ivers attended multiple services and told church members that he had planned to attend upcoming church events on September the 7th, a family picnic and potluck, and September the 11th, which, as many of us remember, the heartbreaking terror on American soil, September the 11th, 2001. A blessing of children going back to school. And September the 14th, an annual baptism service. Church staff searched online and discovered the history that included past threats of violence, a felony conviction. So again, ladies and gentlemen, I beg to ask the question, how in the hell was this man out walking free? Can you imagine? Well, I don't even want to put that in the atmosphere, but I will say this. If that hate and vitriol was that deep in his soul, I just believe there were angels watching over many, many people That's when church staff contacted law enforcement. So again, I just want you to look at this person who was once a mayoral candidate. So this should teach you all something. It doesn't matter if you are wearing a uniform, if you're donning a judicial robe, or perhaps a robe in front of a congregation. You really don't know the mindset and the heart of these people. So as you see the snippet on the screen, look at him. Now, earlier I mentioned that he was arrested on September the 3rd. And you can see up here that information wasn't available because of patient privacy laws, according to Wazata or Wazata. Again, I am unsure how to pronounce that correctly. My apologies in advance. The department did not have an officer available to guard Ivers at the hospital, and he reportedly left the hospital sometime during the night, writes Sergeant Dan Lee. Now, you have someone that is known or is believed to have been known to have waged threats and having a hot temper, but you had no officers available or no type of security to guard Ivers while he was in the hospital. Excuse me. That sounds off the top to me like bullshit. Bullshit. Police rearrested Ivers, as I mentioned earlier, September the 5th, according to the federal complaint. Investigators asked if he thought his book would have scared anyone. In response, it is said that Ivers shouted, "It was supposed to," according to reports. And obviously, he's not in the Bureau of Prisons, he's in police custody. The Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office said that the names of multiple federal judges appear in the document, including that of retired U.S. District Judge Wilhelmina Wright. So she is now retired. And that's the photo of the woman on the thumbnail, as well as the judge who presided over the later case involving threats against a probation officer. In 2018, a jury convicted Ivers of threatening to Red Rum right after she ruled against him in a lawsuit he had filed against an insurance company while on supervised release. Again, how do you release someone like that? To me, that whole department needs to be looked at with a fine tooth comb. He allegedly threatened a probation officer. And there's a piece that I'm looking for. It's not it. Okay. In a search of his vehicle, allegedly turned up copies of the self-proclaimed manifesto, lists of federal judges, miscellaneous list of colleges, miscellaneous list of colleges. Now, I don't believe in coincidences, but who was known to have gone to many college campuses to speak to people and to debate people? Get back to where I was. A photo of the former Pope overlaid with crosshairs, pellets from CO2 cartridges, and fireworks. Keep in mind, this man ran for mayor of Hopkins, and Ivers complained, pay attention to this, that the green light rail extension would be attracting ethnics into Minneapolis. Ethnics, or coloreds. Now, here's a little bit of background on former U.S. District Judge Wilhelmina Wright. I'll give you a moment to look over this so you could see she had a very, very impressive resume. He goes on to say, I gotta go to expletive, ex, expletive jail because you're a, I'll just say no longer head here, lazy judge. According to a trial brief filed by federal prosecutors, I'm going to make sure you feel some expletive pain. Pay attention to this. You, your, you are, all of that together, going to see who the alpha male is. You, no longer here, expletive. This defendant has a long history of using words to frighten and intimidate. Because of the excellent work of the U.S. Marshal Service, he is now being held accountable for making threats against a sitting United States District Court judge in retaliation for the performance of her duties. And again, this was the U.S. District Court judge. So, going back over some of these slides, just pay attention. Of all of these things, it makes no sense how he was able to walk around until he was rearrested again, September the 5th. And that's just a little bit of her background. The word hate. I must have missed a slide because there was something that was very important. But basically, he mentioned somewhere that the God he served, and that's what I wanted you all to see. Some of these individuals, these extremists, talk about God. You people need to be very, very careful of these extremists and the rhetoric that they use. Perhaps I didn't upload it, but here's the indictment. And it's a 3-count, as you can see. Threatening to assault in Red Rum, a federal judge, count 2. Threatening to assault and Red Rum, a federal judge, count 3. Interstate transmission of the threat. And right here was filed on September the 11th. 72 years old. Hate. We are living amongst those who are filled with hate, anger, and rage. A 236-page manifesto claiming on September the 3rd to be having a heart attack. No police officer available to guard This man who was known to the law enforcement community of his threats and hot temper. According to reports, left the hospital the same night. Luckily, rearrested September the 5th. How many people possibly got their hands on that manifesto? There are so many dark areas on the web, unfortunately. We don't know if it was even transmitted via online. Of course, he printed off copies, but who's to say things like this wasn't done in a Discord or Telegram? There are so many other ways. And like-minded people like this, I'm just going to, in my opinion, refer to him as a monster. To target those in law, those that oversee and make decisions, whether people agree with them or not, it's still a judicial process. And then to include children in these nefarious plots. All of this, if you paid attention to my commentary and to the slides I presented, all of these things line up with the tragedies that we've heard and or around that same exact time frame. Who is Robert Philip Ivers, 72 years old? What connections does he have? Were those in charge of supervising him, those in charge of allowing him, even though he threatened men and women on the bench, have a hidden agenda? People question those that are in uniform, masked, and I understand their need for safety, but when you have, in my opinion, people like this roaming the street, you don't know if these people that are masked are really who they say they are. Remember, the two Congress individuals who were red rummed in their home, that was done by a unauthentic police officer or someone who pretended to be an officer of the law when in fact it was not. So people who question and want to see badge names and numbers, can you blame people for wanting to know? And even if they're given a number and a name without an identification, who's to say? People can buy insignia and badges to look authentic online. People specialize in making those things. You just don't know, and you must be careful. So again, on September the 11th, a formal indictment was filed against Robert Philip Ivers, again 72 years old, for threats to red rum, or, as many people know now, unalive a federal judge. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, this is the times for which we live, and when judges are threatened without even blinking an eye, you should be very concerned about your safety as well. I am not saying do not live your life. Absolutely live your life, but use discernment. Be very cautious with whom you trust. And if found in situations, remain calm but ask questions and record if needed. This right here is a travesty because something tragic could have happened. Again, was it bad judgment? Or perhaps, and I'm just asking questions, was this something by design that this man was allowed to roam around in public, to actually go and print off pages, 236 pages of a manifesto entitled How to Unalive a Federal Judge? That's sick. That's diabolical. And again, it just begs me to ask the question, was he the Lone Ranger in all of this, or was there assistance behind the scenes by way of perhaps law enforcement or others in certain powers? Those are things you may want to ask yourself. And again, research these cases, and again, some of the racial slurs that he's made. He's went so far to refer to people of color as ethnics, and the word that blacks were called at one time, coloreds. Again, keep in mind, this man is 72 years old now, so it is my belief that he may have been harboring these types of feelings since a child. A lot to think about, a lot to consider. So for you all that believe that racists don't exist, maybe this story right here, and it's been kind of hush hush, not a lot said about it, at least I haven't seen much about this. Is that by design as well? Thank you for tuning in to this very disturbing, actually disheartening story. Everyone, please, as I always say, be safe, be well, and you do know the rest. Be healthier, not only physically, but mentally. Oh my goodness, mentally and emotionally. Until next video, bye bye for now.